So all political parties, as a matter of fact, have presented their plans of action to Ghanaians. It is a document called a manifesto. The two leading parties, the NDC and MPP, have both presented their manifestos to the country. And as IMANI Africa has been doing over the past years, it has done what it calls IMANIFESTO, where it vets the contents of the two manifestos or the manifestos of the political parties. There was a program in Accra today. Akosia has that story. Akosia, please share with us.
Now, policy think tank IMANI Africa has linked Ghana's current economic challenges to the ruling New Patriotic parties and met promises to stabilize the economy. This was outlined during IMANI's annual IMANIFESTO review, which uses a coding system to evaluate political party manifestos. While speaking at the event, a research associate at IMANI Africa, Dennis Asare, noted that addressing key issues such as access to finance, exchange rate stability, and broader macroeconomic constraints would be crucial steps towards economic recovery.
So let's speak to Dennis Asare now. He's a senior research associate with IMANI Africa. Mr. Asare, welcome to Eyewitness News.
Thanks for having me, Omar.
First of all, good evening to you. First of all, what's the idea behind IMANIFESTO? If you could just share some light.
Okay, so the purpose of IMANIFESTO is to critically investigate the business plans that political parties sell to citizens ahead of elections. The whole idea is that political parties have the tendency of being vague and making very huge promises, but may not have sat down to really look at the implications of that. And our macroeconomic history, or let's say our development history, of short-term growth and long-term instability is a reflection of our inability to actually address the key structural development constraints and also propose solutions that actually yield results in terms of sustainable development. And all of that begins with the kinds of promises or policies that political parties propose. We know from our manifesto assessment that about 56% of political party manifesto promises end up in the coordinated program, and they become key policy frameworks that are budgeted and government takes action on them. And so one of the best ways to ensure that we are very clear on what parties want to do and we understand the implications of what they have to do is at the time of their manifestos, they have to be very clear and minimize the vagueness so that citizens can make informed choices. Another thing too is that it helps us, civil society and yourself in the media, to also really ask the right questions and find out, so what really are you trying to change? Where would we be? How are you able to move the needle with these promises? So those are the sort of interrogations that we seek to achieve with a critical analysis under the IMANIFESTO program.
So what are the big ticket items emerging from your observation?
So, Mario, when we look critically through the manifestos, what we find is that in some instances, the parties are able to clearly state the kind of service that they are going to offer with a particular manifesto promise. So, for example, the NPP said they are going to cut 3% of GDP from government.
Hello, Dennis. Dennis, can you hear me? Apologies, we've lost Dennis Asare of IMANI Africa there. We'll try and re-establish connection with him. This is Eyewitness News broadcasting from Accra, Ghana, around the globe on citynewsroom.com. We are on the campaign trail. This is the Election Bureau. We're holding a conversation with a senior research associate with IMANI Africa, Dennis Asare. We lost him. We've got him back on the line. Dennis, if you can hear me now, you were clarifying from you, explaining to me what the big issues emerging from the manifestos have been for you.
Yes. Okay. So, Mario, when we do a deep dive, what we see is that one, in some instances, the parties are able to clearly state the exact service or what they really want to do precedents or what they intend to do behind a particular manifesto promise. But in most cases, the promises are vague. You can't see them going to do, what they are trying to change, what is going to change the cost of that promise. And that is what we use as a limit mechanism and the promises.
Dennis, I'm losing you again. I don't know. Are you in motion? If you're not, kindly reposition yourself.
No, I'm in motion. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Continue.
Yes. So we are able to tell which promises are quantified, which means that the promise clearly states how much of a service that the party wants to offer or exactly what the party wants to do. Then we're also able to know which ones are non-quantifiable. That is, what the nature of service or what exactly the party wants to do. So generally, what the party's manifestos are vague. They are not specific. You can't exactly see what they want to do or what will happen because they get that particular promise. And that is a challenge in terms of in our current macroeconomic situation and our development constraints. You would expect that the political parties, especially the NDP and NDC, who have been in government before, will be able to reflect and understand what really is feasible within 4 years, taking cognizance of where we are and be very clear with their plans.
So the manifestos are not as clear. That's what you're suggesting.
Yes, they are not really specific, so it will be very difficult to hold them accountable to in case they win the election. And another challenge too is that it makes it difficult for citizens to make informed choice, because this is the business proposal that they are selling to citizens, and the clarity of their promise or their proposal is very important.
But in the past, they've been very specific so that you can track them. And in fact, a manifesto used to even track these manifestos and how the governments have fared. Why do you think they are going the way they are going this time?
Well, so I think that it's been a terrain. There are two products under the Manifesto brand. One is the critical analysis is what we have done. The other one is the ordinal counting, where we take that premise and we try to track and look at all the work that government has done around that issue, whether there's been any evidence of work done around that, then we score that. And that is what we call, that's also called IMANIFESTO. That is different. What this one seeks to do is that we take it and look at, is that promise very clear? And then we also look at feasibility. But what we see is that it's a terrain around political party communications where they want to promise very big things without taking cognizance of the implications that would have either on public expenditure or the sectors within which they are promising that. Or sometimes they have not actually critically reflected on whether that thing that they are seeing is feasible. And so I think it's something that since 2008, IMANI has consistently advocated for, that the party's proposal to citizens must be very clear so that citizens can hold them accountable. So it's something that has been there, even though we see a bit of improvement in terms of how clear parties are able to come out. However, there are still challenges with the clarity or specificity of party.
Dennis, I'm losing you. Can you hear me? Last question. I noticed that you also touched on the 24-hour economy promise of the NDC and John Mahama. What is your point there?
So, 24-hour economy.
Hello, Dennis. Can you restate your position? I didn't hear that.
Is it clear now?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So what I'm saying is that the 24-hour economy is the NDC's anchor program for job creation. And if you look at their key sectors of focus, you can group them into public services and service itself, the industrialization. But what we find is that the key interventions that they are proposing, so for example, they want to implement a time of use tariff system. Now, the time of use tariff system is used to reduce peak load so that you don't get excessive load during the peak time, and which will require you to do load shedding. So you charge lower tariffs during off-peak periods so that businesses can move their production within that time. Now, if this is not carefully done and they go ahead to give lower tariffs, because the 24-hour economy is a voluntary program, it's not a sector-wide initiative. And so if you give lower tariffs for businesses that sign up to this, given our low collection rates and the high energy sector under recoveries and the energy sector debt that's accumulating, we may end up creating a lot more energy sector under recoveries rather than helping the energy sector. Another challenge too is that in terms of providing financial support through the Ghana Exim to support this business, what we find is that especially under the industrialization theme of the 24-hour economy, the key things that are critical to accelerating industrialization is that we need to have a way of fixing our tariffs for industrialization. We need to have a way of addressing the lending rates. Currently, the reference rate is around 29% and commercial rate around 30%. No industrialist can borrow at this rate and be competitive even within the sub-region, not to talk about global. Another challenge that we also see with that is there's this high optimism that the 24-hour economy is going to create a lot more jobs. But when we actually look at our economic history, since 1999 to 2013, if you look at our average growth of about 5%, what we see is that the growth and job creation elasticity, that is how many jobs are created if 1% GDP growth is achieved. It is so low that for every 1% GDP growth that we record as a country, only 0.54% of job is created. And so we have not built, or we have not actually dealt with the structural problems or dealt with the real reasons why businesses cannot create jobs. And so some of these promises, we may end up spending money on them, but we will come back to this same conversation where by the time maybe if in case they come into power and they are leaving office, unemployment will come up as another big ticket issue. Remember that we spend a lot of money on one district, one factory. However, today, almost about 14 million Ghanaians, or about 14% of our population are unemployed. We are seeing a lot more multidimensional poverty now than before. So some of these voluntary programs that do not have sector-wide implication or do not seek to address critical sectoral problems, but are very wide voluntary programs that seek to support but are not really tailored to real structural problems, they end up creating expenditure, but we don't see the result. And so, driven by this argument that our job creation potential as an economy is very low, and so there is very little opportunity for just a 24-hour economy to critically revolutionize job creation and create more jobs. So these are some of the key issues that we have with the 24-hour economy. Our point is that if you fix the macroeconomic constraints, all the other things can fix themselves.
Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much.
That's Dennis Asare. He's a senior research associate with IMANI Africa.